what kind of marriage you want to have, what you want this life to look like in particular, since we're talking about NFP today, in this area of your sexual married love, and what kind of how that will your marriage for, you know, 10, 20, 30, 50 years.
Divorce statistics for couples that consistently practice NFP in their marriages are non-existent because for whatever reason, using contraception starts to build this lie. You don't even intend the lie. You're just trying to solve a problem. It may just work on you in a selfish way. It does its work over time when you are acting out a lie, even if you don't intend it to be a lie.
Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Mike and Sharon Phelan. Mike was actually my first real boss ever. My first job out of college was in the NFP, Natural Family Planning Office in the Diocese of Phoenix. And he was my boss's boss. So he was a little higher up. But he and his wife, Sharon, are such an amazing, beautiful couple. They are a powerhouse when it comes to helping marriages thrive, especially in the Christian Catholic worldview. And I am just delighted to be able to sit down with them and chat about NFP in marriage and practicing NFP in marriage and what that means, what that looks like, joys, sufferings, all of it. So Mike and Sharon, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself? And then I'd love to get into just your story of where you guys started out as a married couple with your view of NFP, how that changed over time, so on and so forth.
Well, we're happy to introduce ourselves, but I have a little story to tell about Haley Yeager. I'll fit that in someplace. So.
Okay. Right now?
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. We've been married for 30 years. Just celebrated in December, our 30th. And it's been an amazing journey. It's been an adventure like no other. I just couldn't even imagine where we would be today. So I'm excited to be able to talk about that. We met at All Saints Catholic Newman Center, and let's just say I blew Mike off about, 5 times, honey, when he tried 4 times.
No, only 4 times. The 5th time
was a charm.
Yeah.
For him to actually get to talk with me. But I don't know if you can tell in the podcast, but he's quite a bit taller than I am and bigger. He looked scary to me at the Newman Center, and thoughtful, kind of melancholic, but he also could have been, I don't know, a serial killer. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Those guys are usually...
Who knows? Who knows?
At Mass.
Who knew the Newman Center was the place?
No, but...
yeah. So first time I saw Sharon was, she was an extraordinary minister of the Eucharist at 7 p.m. Mass at the All Saints Newman Center in Tempe, Arizona, which was the place to meet other Catholic young adults. And I was kind of making my way back to my faith after some distancing from it. And it was such an alive place that it was very contagious, infectious. And this woman's smile just struck me. And then she was going to distribute Jesus. And I was so wondering how I was going to meet her, because I had to meet her with that smile. I was so wondering how I was going to do that, that my first brilliant idea was to get in her line to receive the Eucharist. So I actually went out of my way and I went around to the other side of the church and got into her line, and not even thinking that that was not the best way to meet somebody for the first time, even Jesus in the Eucharist.
Well, we didn't do a lot of talking, so
Yes, so we didn't talk right there. So then I tried 4 times to meet her after Mass in the big scrum of people that would just hang around for a long time after Mass. And 4 times, a couple of times, I saw her see me, and she still didn't want to meet me. So I was a little
embarrassing.
I was a little worried about that, but I had to keep trying. So the 5th time, God intervened, and she was literally in a one-on-one conversation with a childhood friend of mine named Jackie, and she was friends with her, and I was like, this is it. This is the moment.
That's
this
your
is
in.
my friend. Yeah. My in. And I'd met her that way. And apparently as soon as I started talking, it was better.
It was better. started talking about just things like what he was doing. He was a teacher. He wasn't actually a serial killer or anything that I had to worry about.
It's a good thing to
So
confirm, right? Right
Yes.
off the bat.
I really just had to give him an opportunity to start talking, and we hit it off right away. And
Yes.
9 months later,
Yep.
well, I guess it was a year
9 months
later.
later, you were engaged.
9 months. Well, we dated for a year and then had a
Okay.
6 month engagement. So
Yeah.
Got
Yep.
it. Okay.
So that's how it
Yeah.
all started.
that was it,
We live in Mesa, Arizona. We love Arizona. We love being part of this Catholic community. We have 6 children, and they are becoming adults very rapidly. They're 26 to 16, 5 boys and a girl. That's a whole other story, trying to figure out how to try and raise boys in the world we live in. Yeah, we're just so grateful. And we got to be part of Bishop Olmsted's mighty work in building a culture of life and just doing as much as could be done, like at the Diocese of Phoenix, to do that. And what a joy it was to work with him for 18 years. And I got to work with Haley during that time, which brings me to my story.
Yep. Oh boy.
So,
Uh-oh.
it was also at the Happy Newman Center at ASU.
Oh, I know exactly what story you're gonna.
I don't.
I know exactly.
So, it was such a character revealing moment for this amazing person. So it was the same kind of thing. There was like a scrum of people, young adults, outside in the courtyard of the Newman Center, just like when we met each other. And for some reason, they had a bouncy castle-y thing with no top on it. And it was supposed to be this fun thing for all these young adults, but nobody was brave enough to apparently go on it. There was no instructions like, okay, now we're going on the bouncy castle or something like that. So what happened? This girl I had only met a couple of times, but I recognized her, and I thought her name was Haley, got up on the jumpy castle by herself and started bouncing and smiling. And it reminded me of when Sharon was smiling at the Newman Center. It was this radiant smile, and she was bouncing up and down, and she was saying, guys, like as loud as she could, above the crowd, guys, come on, let's be on the bouncy castle, come on. And she just bounced. And I just stopped and I watched her. I was like, that is a
This girl's
leader.
insane.
No, well, maybe. I mean, it could have been insanity, but it was happy insanity, and it was leadership. And I said, if I ever get a chance, we are hiring that girl for a role.
Wow. And that,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
think if I remember right, that was my sophomore year at ASU because I was an intern at the Newman Center.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so I was paid to be actually the jumping house, I
you were
think was
paid?
partly my idea anyways to have this bouncy house because I'm like, what 20-year-olds don't want to go on a bouncy house? It didn't cross my mind that there might be people too embarrassed to do that. So I was an intern. So I think it was like starting with mass and then going into some sort of like college night. But we had the bouncy house set up. And so I'm like, okay, we got to no one's going on this. Why isn't anybody going on this? And so
That might
I'm
be
like, well, I guess I'll start
that
this.
might be an insanity part because you didn't even think 2 people would be too self-conscious to jump on a bouncy castle.
That's
But
great.
that's great, Haley. Well, I did not know the part that you were getting paid, so that makes sense. But you were still a leader who wanted people to have a good time. And I think I already knew through a conversation at some point that you were really passionate about NFP. Like NFP
Yeah.
was something that lit you on fire, which is
Yeah.
not the most common thing. So it kind of showed maybe a charism or a something the Lord was doing in your mind and heart. So anyways,
Yeah.
that was a great little moment, and I didn't say anything to you about it until I think we hired you after that. But yeah.
Yeah. I think you hired me it was probably a year and a half, 2 years after that I applied for that position. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
That
Hey,
was
we
it.
need leaders.
how
We
many
need
years
leaders.
after that did you get married?
Well, oh, no, I think I got engaged to Sean about I graduated December of 2017 and I was dating Sean at the time. And then January was when I started working in the NFP office, and we got engaged that February and then married that following October. So it was right all around that same time. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyways, that's one
So
of my daily
yeah.
stories.
Oh my goodness. Well, and you're right too, that because I remember you, Mike, you were like I don't know if you were a sub or just like a guest,
I
a
was a,
professor
I
for
was
one
a
of the
step
University of Mary classes.
for Christian
Yeah.
Astrology in the marriage class.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Christian marriage. Yes. And I think that that's probably where I first met you. And because it was theology of the body, Christian marriage, of course we're talking about NFP, and I think I just remember asking you questions until your head fell off, and
Yeah,
then there
it
you
was
go.
it was
Yeah.
a really
Yeah.
fun moment. But at one point you said something like, "This just makes me geek out," and it was specifically about NFP and evangelization, um, which I've always been convinced that NFP is one of our most powerful and also least used tools for evangelization in the church. But you were just so excited about that it was very memorable. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So you guys get married. Let's get back to the story. So you guys get married, and what was your view about, or maybe let's start with engagement, because I'm sure you went through some sort of NFP intro during your engagement. So what was your guys' view of NFP in those early years of dating, engagement, and early marriage? How did you guys approach that?
Well, I had heard about it, but I had never given it much thought. So in my mind, it was the rhythm method. It was what people used and ended up with really large families. And I really hadn't given it any thought. And at that point, I know that we had talked and, I thought, well, we need to wait to have children. So in my mind, the only kind of decision that we had to make was, what kind of contraceptive, because in my mind, that was the only choice, to wait 2 or 3 years. But I was concerned because I wasn't sure. So we took the introduction to natural family planning
Because it was required.
because it was required, and I had my arms crossed. And really, that was the first time, though, where um, I was first drawn in by just the scientific method, the scientific basis, that information, and to find out that it wasn't the rhythm method. So those sorts of things started. I was kind of like a hobbit. I was just kind of going along with life, not questioning these things. And that really struck me. So, and not to mention the joy of the couple that was teaching the class. So
Yeah.
my
Yeah, that was
my
great.
heart and my mind were really starting to be open to this idea.
Yeah.
Mike
It was
already
very
was on
tense.
board.
Well,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
very tense
intense.
because strangely enough, I was the one totally on board with NFP.
Mhm.
And it was more, I didn't know much about NFP, but I knew it was good. And that's because I had dropped in on a Janet Smith class at the University of Dallas. And she was regularly challenging everybody about contraception. And she was very articulate and funny and really strong. Like she challenged the men in the class to really consider how much of a man you are if your plan is to subject your wife to these chemicals so that you don't have to deal with the
Wow.
baby when it's inconvenient. And
What a
I
woman.
was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, but we don't think about it. But she made us think about it. And so
Yeah.
I mean, I was a complete knucklehead in sexuality in so many ways, but on that particular topic, it made total sense to me. And so I was eager for NFP. I knew she was not on board, really, but she was open a little bit, and she knew I was kind of for it. But I mean, I was praying that introduction was good because it
Yeah.
was going to be a really tense conversation if it
And
wasn't. So,
just the fact that you were wanting us to look into that more gave me pause to think about,
mm,
well, why and what. He obviously knows more about it than I do. And we started having conversations about it. So I also learned in the introduction something as a Catholic that nobody had ever told me, which was that the pill can act as an abortifacient. It's not intended. It's intended to prevent ovulation, but so just these like
Oh,
facts.
well, it has a
Well,
backup
well,
mechanism.
yes, it had. That's what I mean. It has the backup mechanism, but that's not
Yeah.
what you
It's there to
are,
prevent a pregnancy.
unless you're like reading the insert of the pill where it's
Yeah.
clear.
Yep.
There were some things that just were starting to kind of swoosh around in my mind, like, gosh, I want to learn more about this. I want
Yeah.
to. Um,
So
so
we're,
we
yeah.
so we took the full series,
Yeah.
even though wasn't required at the time, and that is like you. I was just blown away. Everything, every detail about my fertility. Just we were back there, laughing about mucus and different
Y'all
things, but
totally
we were really
giggled.
just
Called us
simply
the
passionate about.
gigglers. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
document we had to read Humane
Yeah.
Vitae,
It's required.
that was a game changer for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, just all the beautiful insights in that and the depth and the beauty of the church's teachings and just wanting to
Yeah.
promulgate the truth out there for us. So
Yeah.
it was a game changer.
We met a couple of our hero couples in learning NFP. We met Duke and Beverly Beatty, to whom we're very grateful, and who had the testimony of never being able to have children. This was our intro couple.
Mm.
They were never able to have children, but they still abstained during what would be a fertile week out of respect
Interesting.
for their marital, out of their marital love, and in being examples to those they were teaching NFP to. Like, we're abstaining too, guys, and you can do this,
Yeah.
right? So they had this integrity of life and this really beautiful relationship. And that was awesome. And then Deb and Gary Callahan taught us NFP, and they were hilarious. And we had never heard a couple ever talk frankly about their sex life together in just a matter of fact and really funny way. So we were able to just laugh our way through that class and learn a ton. And so the teachers we had became heroes of ours, and then we wanted to be like that. Like, we were like, okay, these are happy couples. They know what they're doing. They honor being a husband and a wife and being a mother and a father. And like, that's what the world needs. So like, we were teaching them, we went from her not being interested, or no, being interested but worried about it, to me hoping it would be good, to like, let's go. Within a year, we were in the teaching community of NFP, and
Yeah.
that's how it happened.
Okay, I want to go back for a second because Sharon, I'm intrigued to know what brought on that worry or that fear that you had. I know, Mike was saying you had an openness still, but you came in with trepidation. So as far as I know, you grew up Catholic, if I'm correct in saying that. So where did that fear or that worry or that distrust come from when you entered into that NFP class?
Well, I've thought about that a lot, and I did grow up Catholic in a great family, the middle of 7 kids, which is probably the beginning of just thinking about NFP, because I was pretty sure my parents, we didn't really talk about those things, but very Catholic family. Um, Interestingly, my brother, so there was a big space. We had 5 kids, big space, last 2 kids. And my second to the last brother was born actually on the birthday of Humane Vitae, July 25th, which is interesting to look back to now and just the gift that he is to our family and my 2 brothers. But I know that there was a time of confusion in there in the church with the sexual revolution. And I think that, there wasn't the kind of information that there is today to give our parents the information they needed to help us to understand all of this sexuality and what was going on. And I went to a secular university, and I just think I was really influenced by the kind of, you go girl, you can do it, you don't need a man, you can have it all. You can have the career. And so, a part of me that you don't know was those years after college where, I was a business major. I moved to California. I was a sales rep for a big pharmaceutical company car, thought I had it all. Everything was, this is living life. I'm going to do everything that I thought that, it was supposed to be like. to be successful as a woman in a business world. So I think, and while I loved children, I was worried I didn't have any of the mom genes in me. And so it was really this, there was like a multifaceted layers of, just like, well, if we do this thing, then we're gonna have this huge family. And when we got married, I was still finishing my master's degree, and we want to wait because I was right in the middle of great career time and so there was just a lot of, and still the world saying, well, you know, get you need a house, you need a lot of things settled, you need to do all these things before your life is over when you, start having kids. And well, I didn't see that in my mom and dad. My mom's is joyful, stay at home mom who just loved us and loved being a mom and wife, and was also a nurse on the side. But so it was a lot of things. Does that answer your question? Kind of where I was
Yeah.
at? And it was just
Yeah,
things I
absolutely.
had to sort through in those first couple of years. So you could ask Mike. We really practiced NFP in almost a fearful way in my first 3 years,
Mm.
because I thought we had to get all these things in a row, kind of ducks in a row before we start having kids. And that's where the big conversion came, was when actually the big conversion came when I was ready, and we now weren't using NFP to avoid, but yet to be open and to try to have children, because in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm ready now. And we didn't get pregnant. And
Oh.
I had, and fortunately,
For
it
one
wasn't,
month.
fortunately, it was, God was merciful. God was merciful, but still, we've been practicing NFP, and there were even people at Mike's work that must have figured that we must be infertile at this
Oh
point,
yeah.
because we
Mm.
were doing this NFP thing. So I had to come face to face with that. Well, maybe we are. Oh my gosh. So
Oh, I see.
that
So
month
you
was,
had, yeah. And I will say too, like when you are in the middle of that, no matter how long it is of waiting, whether it is just the 1 month, couple months, years, you don't know how long it's going to be. So just that fear and that worry just crumbles you when it doesn't happen when you expected it to. So I totally understand that. So you said the first 3 years of marriage. So your engagement, you took the NFP class, your heart became opened, you started like really getting on board. But then the first 3 years, you were using NFP to avoid pregnancy. And you said something about that being more out of fear. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, was the fear of just having children and then that was going to be the end of your life? Or like, where was that fear coming from? Or maybe it was the same place.
yeah, I think it was the same place. I
Mhm.
mean, right? Like I just kept, wanting to, like, well, we're gonna pay this off. We're gonna get a house.
Finish the
I'm gonna
degree.
finish a degree. We need to kind of have these ducks in a row.
Mhm.
And again, I was still kind of coming down from this, getting my full identity from, work, and kind of what
Mm.
that looks like then as a mom, and what that was going to look like. So
Which there's no
it
perfect
was a
solution to.
slow, and
Yeah.
gratefully, after God gave us the gift of Brendan, which
Yeah.
was our first, that was like, the Sisters of Life have a great slogan of the need makes the mother. So here's this little, like, child that was put in my arms, our arms, after he was born. And like every fiber of my being wanted to just take care of him. He needed me, he needed his mama and no one else. And so that was a game changer for me. And then after that, God was really merciful in that he gave me a job that I loved, and was able to go down to 2 days a week and 1 day a week. And so, as a consultant, so it really was a beautiful, gradual kind of into motherhood, of also having this other thing that I loved to do some. And then also, so God was really Yeah,
Yeah.
working.
So yeah,
Would
I
you
think
add anything?
I would just that for those 3 years of using NFP, um, doing the good does its work on you, whatever
It
your
did.
intentions are, right? Using contraception does its work on you no matter what good motives you have for using it, right? It does its work on you, right? NFP does its work on you too because you're cooperating with the natural rhythm of the body. You're learning to abstain, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we had 3 years of learning how to abstain during the fertile time and with high motivation, however selfish it was, and it was pretty selfish, right? We would probably go back and change that now, but still, there was a conversion happening that whole time to the truth, to the body, to the mind, to and abstinence. Even St. Paul says way before NFP was known is good for your marriage, right? And St. Paul in one of
Yeah.
his letters talks about that. So abstain for a time for the sake of prayer. And so abstinence is good for marriages, right? It's good. It strengthens you in all kinds of ways you would never expect. And so I think Sharon is nailing something when she says the moment Brendan was born was her full conversion to the goodness of life, the gift of life. But we were being converted that whole time, even though our motives were probably short of the generosity that Humanae Vitae calls for. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was a fear to acceptance to joy in my
Yeah.
fertility, like this, and almost
That's
like you couldn't see the exact, like you could see some stark like moments of conversion, but you also didn't, I didn't even notice until, now we've been married 30 years. Our oldest is 26. I can see a lot of those things that were happening, along the way now in hindsight.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's probably the best I can explain kind of to
Yeah.
where I was at.
And
God worked
Mike,
with
was the same thing happening to you in that 3 years? Like, were you kind of battling that fear as well, or were you just trying to honor your wife and her desires?
I think it was more the latter.
Okay.
I was open to children. If they came, I was like, great, you know. But I wasn't feeling pressured to have kids now or anything like that. So I was just
Mhm.
kind of open. And it's funny, my motivation was like consistent, like the whole time. Even, then once we started trying, Sharon's motivation to have a child went from, way down here to when we started, especially hanging out with our nephews, our young nephews, like
hmm
her, and we got our house. We had that issue checked off the box. Her motivation went way higher than mine. It's like now, and then that's why the first month of trying and targeting the fertile time was devastating for her, because it's like, wait, oh no, it's not just
Mhm.
flip a switch, and either way, it's not just flip a switch. So in a way, we were also being converted out of this modern understanding of the body as a tool we use for our own ends, and we flip switches on and we flip them off, and that's what you're taught about your body in the world, with and science facilitates a lot of that, but it's not like that. The body isn't like that. The body doesn't obey you. um, and God is involved. God is your he is completely involved in this whole process, and when that conception happens, he gives that little blastocyst a soul. He
Yeah.
does that. That's not your job. You don't do that. He does that. So we had a lot of things to convert out of,
we and we
and
we could have been talking a lot better through that time to kind of, but to
yeah,
explore that,
maybe, yeah,
and just been more open to, well, what's going on underneath the surface here. But
Yeah.
we were kind of just living life, both working full time and just kind of,
yeah. We were busy.
that's what it looked like for
Yeah,
us.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, now you have 30 years of marriage and with the wisdom of marriage to view that time with. Like, you have a different lens that you view that time with than you did when you were living in it. So, and even, I mean, Sean and I have only been married for 7 years, but even still, we can look at the first year and just kind of like go, oh my gosh, like,
yeah,
what were we thinking? What were we doing? Yeah, yeah. Well, so then you had Brendan, and then I don't think there's a huge gap between the six kids,
No,
right? So I'm assuming there was some sort of bigger openness at that point of continuing on. Yeah. What did that look like?
fact, I would say that God also, the other thing that God kind of was interesting, he saved me a little bit from, like, when I met Mike at the Newman Center, I was 29 already. And when you look at the numbers for fertility and the increase in infertility as you get older and the decrease of our fertility that just comes naturally, there was no, I wasn't surrounded by a group of people who were also thinking in those terms. The group I was surrounded by was more like well, you'll you'll do it on your terms, and then you'll have a few kids, and then your fertility, hopefully that will end. And so um so I guess what I'm saying is that the at that point, when we had Brendan came first, and then Jonathan was 15 months behind. And at this point, we were like in hook, line, and sinker. Like, they changed our life. They changed our families' lives. They were the first. They were the first grandkids for Mike's side of the family, and there was just so much joy. And so we're like, bring it on,
She's
Lord.
a
All
great
right.
mom. She's a total natural. She just didn't know that.
I didn't know
She
it.
was being educated out of that, which really annoys me.
Well,
How many women, how many
all
women
right.
are being distracted away from the gift of their motherhood
But
by
I also
bad
had,
education?
Yeah.
but I also
So
had a great mom. I had a
I
great
know
mom, and
that's even
so
yeah.
she, so if other women are afraid like me, or even like just surrounded in a culture where those are some of the things that they might be thinking of, and they have either no mother or a you know more difficult situation,
Yeah.
then that makes it even tougher. But in our case, yep. And then our next one, Liam, came a couple years after that. And then a really beautiful story before we moved to DC. And I don't know if you want to get to that, but we lost a
Yeah.
baby. And that was another huge, huge moment of trust in our life. Because
Let's tell a
do
quick
you want to?
version of that story.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
So
it's
this was God obviously speaking very deeply to us in an event. So
in using, yeah, just so the fear came back because we had decided now that, so the reason that we were going to leave, we were introduced to theology of the body at a Christopher West conference. So here we are, we already understand NFP. We're like in hook, line, and sinker with our family, 3 kids. He was teaching 7th and 8th grade at a public high grade
elementary
school.
Yeah.
And he came home one summer, or actually it was the beginning of the school year, and he was usually really excited to go back to school. But this year was different. He had 3 kids, it's 3 of his best kids. And he said, honey, these kids came back and their stories of their families falling apart is just tragic. Without going into detail, they all had, like, the 3 of his best kids had just
Yeah.
terrible stories of their families. So then
Just devastating.
he was saying it's getting really difficult to help kids write a 5-paragraph essay when their families are falling apart around them.
Yeah, I think we're called to deal with this as teachers. Like, I think this is it became clear that somebody had to try to help with this.
Well, and we had gone to
So
the Christopher West Day,
yeah.
and afterwards, Mike is such an excellent teacher and so knowledgeable and like a sponge when it comes to information and wisdom. And so after that talk, I said, honey, I could see you teaching that. And that was like God speaking to me, to my husband, like, maybe this might be your mission. You guys might be called to go to do something really crazy and go to, sell your house, go to DC for him to get his master's degree. So here we are. We're pretty much decided that's what we're supposed to do. We've already asked family and friends to support us. People are going to support us.
The whole NFP community.
He's been accepted. We're on our way. And now we find out we're expecting number 4.
because we weren't exactly
Yeah.
practicing careful NFP at this
Well,
point.
because at this point, yeah,
NFP is as effective as you make it.
that's
So,
right, Haley.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your charts are not lying or lack of. We weren't, I don't think we were even thinking about that.
So we just asked for all this support, and now we're expecting another child. And we're like, oh man, we're gonna have to share that news. And aren't
So
you
the
guys
fear,
NFP teachers? Like, what's going on with it? And so the fear came back a little bit, the nervousness about that. But
what will
the
people think?
critical part of this story is that my wife, who had never liked the name Gabriel, went to Mass on March 25th at the cathedral. And the homily struck her, or something really struck her. And she came home and she got all mystical on me. And she said, I know this baby's name. This baby is going to be named Gabriel. And we were like, 6 weeks in at this point. We just barely found out we're pregnant. And I was like, well, okay. All right.
Well,
all right.
because
I like it.
what
I
happens
like it.
on the Annunciation? The angel Gabriel comes to Mary and says, "Be not afraid." And that was what I needed to hear. Like, okay, so what? If people are going to want to say things about us going to DC with 3 and 1 on the way, then so be it. All right.
She was like, it was awesome. It was like meeting my wife, the saint, after that Mass. So,
odd moment.
So God intervenes in that way. And then I'm like, great, I love that name. This is Gabriel. So we're excited about that. The last piece that had to fit in for us to live in DC was housing. The very last piece. Everything else was coming together in a crazy way. And I'm emailing back and forth with some people that studied at the JP2 Institute for Marriage and Family Studies, where we went to study, who are graduates and who are still in the DC area. Do you have any ideas for Mike and Sharon? They have 3 kids. What are we going to do? This guy, Paul Mulligan, who happens to be the head of our Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Phoenix now, who was a Phoenix dude and was living in DC, says, oh, hi, Mike and Sharon. You know what? Would you be interested in being house directors for the Gabriel Project? Now,
oh my gosh,
this is during the school day, and I'm in. The additional detail here is that right a week before this conversation on email, we lost the baby. We lost the baby at about 8 weeks, and so Paul asks me, "Would you like to be house directors at a home for women in crisis pregnancy called the Gabriel Project?" And I literally lost it.
I bet.
And the kid, one of the kids came up and said, Mr. Phelan, are you So
you're like, no, I'm not.
To me, and I open it in the same way. I'm like, this is crazy.
So literally the last obstacle to doing this crazy thing of leaving everything, our careers, and still in the house, and leaving for 2 years, got filled in through the gift of this child who we lost. And anyways, that was a big part of a deepening of our conversion, that God's got us. God's going to take care of you. And so, then we went away to study the next year.
And he gave us the gift, because I don't know if you know what the Gabriel Project is, but it's a project for helping women in crisis pregnancy. So we got to spend the first year in DC as house directors, living in the basement of this beautiful house that was supported by a parish and also by the Gabriel Project funds. And I was the house director pretty much, but we did it together. So we had 3 women that we got to welcome in, and they had their own rooms, but we had a living, like a common space, and then we had ours downstairs. So we had our 3 boys downstairs and these beautiful, women in crisis pregnancy living upstairs. And it was another gift to just be able to interact and share and encourage and support these beautiful women and this program.
Which was very enlightening about what happens in pregnancy when everyone's support disappears. So all these things were kind of happening at the same time. And NFP is a golden thread in our lives through all of this, because we got in touch with Paul because of Janet Kistler, who was the coordinator of the NFP project at the USCCB at the time.
And
So,
and to finish the last couple of children, then, my heart was just still longing, even though again, this was probably the next time, the only other time we really used NFP or thought of like to space at this point in our marriage, because we thought, well, we're going to be here just for 2 years and people are supporting us. But I just couldn't, I was tuned to the Holy Spirit, and it just felt like God was calling us to be open and trust again. And so we got pregnant with Andrew, number 4, which was when we wrote that article. And what a blessing that was, because he was actually delivered by Dr. Bruchowski, who is a really well-known, he's who Dr. Leonard worked underneath, and Bill Leonard used to be an abortionist, and so he lives back there and got to work through their life.
Man. Great leader, another very enthusiastic leader like Haley.
That's who Morning Star is. Their whole facility is also kind of modeled after Dr. Bruchowski. So we had Andrew, came back. Mike got the job here with the diocese. Just to come full circle, I don't know if you want us to go that far to finish up the story of how we ended up in Phoenix.
That's how.
Yeah. How'd you end up back here? Okay.
Yeah.
So you became the director. You were the director of the Marriage and Family Life Office in the Diocese of Phoenix, and it was in Respect Life, and that was right when you guys came back from DC after you finished your studies. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 2 more kids after that.
And then 2 more kids after that. That was just a joy. Just a joy. And well, 1 more miscarriage in there of Mary Teresa. So we have a Gabriel and a Mary Teresa. And the difference, I can't remember if you've had a miscarriage, but the difference between losing Gabriel and not having support from being able to have somewhere to bury your child, and to be able to have someone who understands that this was a gift from, conception, to when I was at Dr. Leonard's office at Morning Star, where they have a program with Queen of Heaven Cemetery where you can bury the remains of your baby. And, the experiences between my miscarriages were like night and day, from kind of the secular to the like real fruit of the fullness of experiencing the gift of a baby and knowing what we lost, because we have 1 daughter. And it really struck me that this would have been another daughter, most likely, for our daughter. So anyway, God has used a lot of beautiful children moments in our life, no doubt. And NFP started it all.
Yeah.
I
think I don't know how many listeners are in Phoenix, but I just think we're so lucky to be here in Phoenix, because we have, at least the Catholic Church here has just such a pro-life stance of I just interviewed a few months ago, Jocelyn Abiad. She started a nonprofit called We Hear You Still. And it's about helping women, carrying them through their miscarriage, giving them just like the option to bury your baby. Like that in and of itself is such a beautiful dignified way of honoring that lost child. And I in Morning Star OBGYN out in Gilbert, them providing that really and offering that to every couple that does experience a miscarriage is just such a huge blessing, and really an eye-opener, especially for couples that are experiencing miscarriage, and that the culture is just saying, they call it a chemical pregnancy if it's early enough, or it's not even a pregnancy, or it's not a human, or it's not whatever. But as we know, no, that is your child, and your child deserves just as much dignity as any other human being. And so I'm glad you had that. I'm so glad you had that experience. So then, Mike, you became the director, and then from there, I mean, you were overseeing the NFP office. You were overseeing every. I mean, you really are a huge part in Phoenix becoming this pro-life community. And having was the March for Life here before you became director? Did you bring that?
No, we kind of it kind of got resurrected under the time of
Okay.
Bishop Olmsted, and the diocese kind of took it on as its own project. But we had some
Hmm.
really great marches back early in the 70s due to Arizona Right to Life. They had done great work there.
Okay.
But the leadership changed and things got a little, the march wasn't as strong or wasn't happening a couple of times. And that got rebuilt during that time. So that was a joy to be part of that. Um, it all just kind of came together. God gave us a clear mission. Marriage, family, life have to be protected and promoted. And you've got to be a part of that in some way, shape, or form. We had no idea what part of that, but we just had to learn more. We had to get stronger in our understanding and be able to communicate it.
Being the director of the Marriage and Family and Respect Life office, you guys were running the March for Life, and you were making marriage prep for Catholic marriages as strong as it was with the classes and NFP. And Sean and I went through that process of marriage prep ourselves. And that was just, we both of us were very blessed to be in families where we were taught those things, and we didn't necessarily have to have that conversion to it per se, but it did nothing but continue to just light this fire in our hearts to be open to life, to practice NFP, to be knowledgeable about theology of the body, and just entering into that. And that foundation has laid such a beautiful marriage for us, despite hardships and joys. I mean, it's been that foundation, which has just been such a huge blessing. I want to ask you guys now that you have that 30 years of experience of, sorting through fears and sorting through NFP and achieving and avoiding and theology of the body and moving to DC, moving back, all of the things. What is some of your top advice for couples? Well, let's say for engaged or newly married couples. What are some of the things, like if you have any tidbits? I know you guys are still teaching marriage prep and still walking with engaged couples. What are just some of those really strong pieces of advice that you give to those couples to help them start their marriages strong?
Bishop Olmsted always used to say, trust the truth. So that always struck me as simple but very profound, that the church is not just saying true things, but the church is a truth-telling thing. That's a G.K. Chesterton quote of some kind. That was what struck him about the church, is that he said the philosophers always say things that seem to be true, but the church just keeps saying things that don't seem to be true, but they turn out to be true. Like even when the world thinks it's crazy. And so trust the truth. That is, on these deep issues of faith and morals, the church has this guarantee from Christ through the Holy Spirit and through the discernment of the bishops with the Pope to protect the truth no matter what. And when it comes down to official pronouncements on the truth about those things, faith and morals, not science or any other issues, but faith and morals, that we can trust the church as this truth-telling thing, as the body of Christ, which has the mind of Christ. So don't worry about trusting that truth, and open yourself up to it. You won't regret it. We never met any couple that we had helped directly or through the classes who took us up on the challenges we offered, which are pretty strong challenges. 92% of couples were sexually active coming into marriage prep. We know that. Challenging them in a loving and direct way to abstain now. Now that you've heard why you would do that, abstaining until your wedding night, until the time of your wedding, is crucial for you to build a real foundation for your love inside of your marriage. We never met any couple that took us up on that challenge that said it was dumb.
No.
Mhm.
Who said it was a bad idea, like, oh my gosh, we were fooled. No, never. Same with NFP. The couples that took up the challenge of NFP, we never met anybody that said, like, I can't believe we trusted that. And so trust the truth, and it may be difficult, but it will be worth it. It might be
Mhm.
difficult at times, but it'll be worth it. Like you just said about your marriage to Sean, right? There are real difficulties in marriage that are not prevented by following the truth.
Yeah.
But it's infinitely better than following lies.
Yeah.
And so that would be a main one. Do you have another like critical thing you would share?
I think I would piggyback on that and just say that was huge for me because the truth is not afraid to be examined, and
Mm,
truth and love
mm,
go hand in hand. So if just being open in your marriage prep in particular to what God has, and that there are so many people out there that want to answer questions, that have been through it, that know the hard things that that you might be experiencing. I mean, we have a couple right now we're helping with marriage prep, and they're going through some real discernment, things, and hard kind of steps right now. And there are people that are praying for them. There are priests that are, all the priests faithful that want to help couples and, you know, really encourage them. And
Yeah, I think that's for on the apologetic side, what Sharon said about the truth is not afraid of examination. So
Yeah.
go ahead and throw all your questions at this, test it and dissect it and go to the bottom of it, because the truth is just not afraid of that process.
and
Just lies are afraid of that process. And the world's, and I'm not saying the world is wrong on everything. We know that, right? There's a lot of wisdom you can gain from intelligent secular people, but um, behind the lies that we do get fed regularly is a spiritual force, the enemy, Satan, who is very intelligent and knows how to package lies very well. And they are very afraid of examination, those lies. They don't want to be examined. They don't stand up for 20 minutes once they get examined. And so don't be afraid to examine those things too. These a lot of what Sharon was fed about what's important in life. Um, Nothing wrong with careers,
no,
obviously, but
no,
that's going to make your life to be the great thing that it's called to be by itself. There's way more to life than work. And so examine all of these presuppositions and trust the truth, and
Yeah.
and
examine
keep asking. I have a quote. Do you mind if I read a quote that
Please.
really
Yes.
struck me from Humane Vitae?
Yeah.
Ask yourself, don't be afraid to ask yourself what kind of marriage you want to have, what you want this life to look like, in particular, since we're talking about NFP today, in this area of your sexual married love, and what kind of how that will affect your marriage for, you know, 10, 20, 30, 50 years,
it.
and
Yeah.
what kind of marriage you want. This quote from Humane Vitae says, married love, or sex, as we're talking about, married love is not merely a question of natural instinct or emotional drive. It is also, and above all, an act of the free will, whose trust is such that it is meant not only to survive the joys and sorrows of daily life, but also to grow so that husband and wife become, in a way, one heart and one soul, and together attain their human fulfillment. Like, it's so much more than just the beautiful tool that it is, right? It's meant
Yeah.
to, like, shoot us to, like John Paul the Great says, what's that quote about the a vector of aspiration? Our whole sexual life is meant to be a vector, like there's never a point where you are there, right, Haley? Like in your married life, like you and Sean, like you're close, but every year you see you're getting closer and closer in your married
Yeah.
love, and this whole like thing that we're talking about today, like, is meant to just like shoot us to the moon in terms of like where we can be as a couple and our love.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Because love's the
Yeah.
main point. Love is the main point of life. There's a lot of things that go into that, but one of the gifts of NFP is that it is a tool to grow in that capacity to use your will and your intelligence to discipline your sexual drives so that they build something really beautiful and strong. And that's why we have that gift of our sexual desire. It's to build something really beautiful and strong that doesn't end in this life, even after death. That trajectory of love that Sharon was talking about, that vector of aspiration, that thing we want to become and be, continues all the way into heaven. And NFP is so helpful because it uses science to clear up some really sad misunderstandings about the way we're built, about our bodies, about how fertility works, about what the chemicals of contraception do to us. And so it's really a way of moving toward what you always wanted to become and be and do in your life at your deepest, most noblest part of yourself, right? And then you get to do that together. You get to fall in love with this person, this crazy person that you married, and it becomes, through this growth of your capacity to love, something you could have never imagined, something beautiful and strong. And
Don't start crying.
your kids can rest in that, and not just rest in that, but have so much hope for being able to love well themselves, right?
Yeah.
They get a boost. They get a great start to that. They're going to have their own free will, and they're going to make their mistakes and all that, but they're going to have this.
They can go out without hesitation towards their mission and their vocation with just great passion and joy.
Yeah. So those would be our very aspirational thoughts for couples, but also super practical. It's also super practical. And NFP is one of the most helpful tools we have to start growing in it. So.
Yeah. Honestly, what you said about truth and investigating and examining the truth isn't afraid to be questioned. I really, really love that phrase, because I think in maybe other faiths or in other religions, it is this idea of like, oh, don't question what we believe. Like, don't question it. It's a lack of faith to question it. When in all reality, if it is pure truth, if it is objective truth, question it all you want, because it'll stand. And that is honestly, I think one of the reasons I love NFP so much and have loved, I have just kind of this natural pull to it and just examining it, is because it can be fully examined. When you start examining contraception, whether it's on a scientific level of the chemicals and how it wrecks women's bodies and all that, I mean, it can't stand up to that. But then on the other end, if you look at also how it destroys marriages, like even just setting aside a hormonal contraceptive for a minute, thinking about a condom, it's a barrier contraceptive. It is putting a barrier between you and your spouse. And that is not the language of what sex is supposed to be. And so it's a lie. It is a lie, and it can't stand up to those questions. And I think that that's why I love it so much, is because you can question it all day, every day, and it can be backed every time. It can stand every time. And I think, that there are times when, as a couple, I get questions a lot too of like, well, can't you use NFP selfishly too? And okay, yeah, you can. But I think for contraceptives, you're using that selfishly. Like that just is. Whereas with NFP, maybe it starts out with that fear, with that selfishness, with that worry. But because of what you are doing, you are still practicing self-mastery. You are still practicing chastity. You are still inviting that openness to life in your marriage. And without placing that physical barrier between the two of you, it's going to open your heart, even if it starts out in that selfish way. That is exactly what your guys' story shows, is that even if it starts out with a fear, with a selfishness, or whatever you want to call it, I don't think it can't not grow into something more beautiful, into something more fruitful. So
Yeah.
I'm just, yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's really beautifully said, Haley. And
Mhm.
I think um, that is why divorce statistics for couples that consistently practice NFP in their marriages are non-existent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because for whatever reason, using contraception starts to build this lie. You don't even intend to lie. You're just trying to solve a problem, right? Problem
Yeah.
that I'm trying to solve a problem. And it may be very selfish, and it may just work on you in a selfish way. It does its work over time when you are acting out a lie, even if you don't intend it to be a lie. And this is why people have to know NFP, because if they don't know it, that's why I have to know about it. And it's such a great evangelistic tool because the world knows science way better than it does theology.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of the students we run into know more about science than they do about theology. And we've run into, people in the medical field that didn't know a thing about NFP, even though they'd studied
Yeah.
medicine,
Yeah.
uh, who learned it in marriage prep. And they have this revelation, and these things fall into place for them. It's a great evangelistic tool because it simply begins with what we do know clearly about the body and the bodies, and the combined male and female body and fertility. And it simply lays that out, which is a biological map toward God's plan for marriage and human life in general, right? It's just starting with biology, which a lot of people can start with. They're not closed to biology, right? So it's not afraid to be examined. It's something that's a great bridge to the secular person, and
Yeah.
we should be doing much more with NFP as a bridge to evangelization, to meeting Christ, because the church was not the only developer of NFP, but a big part of it, because our many scientists of faith did the hard work of studying it.
And if someone is even looking into the Catholic faith, as Mike says, he thinks that was like, if there was one thing that kept you Catholic, like you knew, like Catholic faith is it. It's the unchanging truth on this particular teaching. And
Mm-hmm.
the beauty, I listened, like actually, because you can listen to Humane Vitae on human life from Pope Paul VI in 1968. And if you're just someone who's even looking into being Catholic, or what is the truth about everything in life, right? Just that they can listen to the documents of the church, or read them, or and just have this clarity of what does the church teach and why. And it makes so much sense in terms of even the predictions that were made in 1968 about what would happen to the culture if contraceptive became, methods became just a standard of the day, and all those things I don't think anyone could say haven't happened since then. So there's just this beauty in the way that it's presented, that if your heart is open to listening to it as a just listening and saying, is that true? Then you'll get to question it and ask all your questions that you have about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many people find Humane Vitae and the church's very brave and stalwart, consistent teaching on contraception and openness to life and promotion of NFP, the whole package, that get interested in the church, including many people in the medical field. So it's a great tool. We should use it for that purpose as well.
But it's a tool
Yeah.
that you can use or not use, be open to life completely, however that
Yeah, I mean, we maybe should mention that NFP is not a requirement to use as a tool in your marriage, right? You can, but contraception is counter to your marriage. And so NFP knowledge, I think, is critical and essential, and NFP use is up to that couple. But it's such a great tool for learning about all of this. And when couples do have to abstain, do have to postpone having a child for serious reasons, as the document says, it's very effective for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike and Sharon, thank you so much. You guys are so full of wisdom. And if anything, I learned a lot from hearing your story. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners did too. So thank you guys so much for being here and being open to sharing your story. And I just really appreciate you too.
Thanks.
It's a joy, Haley.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this.